of the things that we really hope to accomplish in nights like tonight is to encourage you. So, are we encouraged? It's pretty nice to hear from somebody like Barry Loudermilk, who I think could pastor half the churches in this state just as easily as he could represent us in the halls of Congress. Am I right? And, it's nice to know that a lieutenant governor like Burt Jones and an attorney general like Chris Carr are fighting for people like us and values like these in the halls of the Gold Dome just a couple of miles away. So, I want to kind of fill you in a little bit on, we're about 14 years old. Our organization is about 14 years old. And we need to be able I need, especially insiders like those that we have in this room, I need you to understand kind of the vision and the incremental kind of ratchet that we're trying to accomplish here. So years ago, I was a missionary and then a minister for a while before I lost my soul and went to law school. And coming out of law school, I went to work in the Texas legislature for a few years, about 4 years, and worked on policies exactly like this. And in working both in the legislature and also running campaigns during that time, I came to realize in Texas that while we had a lot of really great candidates on the political right that were standing for biblical values, organizationally, the left was really out strategizing us, I would basically say. So we had the volume, we had more voters in a place like Texas. We frankly had usually even a little bit more money in a place like Texas, and we definitely had the better candidates. But because they had a handful of national organizations with strong presences in Texas, their strategic engagement was actually superior to ours. So after about 3 election cycles of witnessing this basically firsthand in places like Houston and Dallas and Austin, this kind of light bulb had a bit of an epiphany that there were organizations like the ACLU and organizations like the Sierra Club that works on environmental issues. There were organizations like MALDEF and the National Commission on Human Rights, basically, that they were year in, year out, cycle in after cycle out. They were always just incrementally ratcheting their organizational vibrancy in Texas, and over time it was actually moving the needle a little bit. So ironically, around that time, I met somebody who was a friend of Ralph's, and we wound up connecting, and it just so happened that obviously that Faith and Freedom was looking for an executive director, and I was thankful to be able to come on board because even at that time, still relative fledgling organization, I could see the strategic benefit of having a truly kind of a historical trajectory behind the organization, not just purely kind of the volume and the right beliefs. So after I've been here now for I guess nine years will be next month. And by the way, my wife is here tonight. At first, she's a Texan herself. She was pretty reluctant to, talk about you can take the girl out of Texas, but you can't take the Texan out of the girl. That thankfully we've truly indoctrinated her as a Georgian, so much so that our in-laws actually just moved to Georgia. So we actually just registered 2 new Republican voters here in our own family. But thankfully we're seeing not only here in Georgia, but in other states like Florida, like Tennessee, like Virginia, like North Carolina, like West Virginia, like Pennsylvania, like Ohio. I can go across the map, especially the Southeast and the Midwest. We're seeing organizations like this built that truly will persist and perpetuate beyond just this election cycle or even this presidential cycle, because it's incredibly important for these biblical values within a constitutional framework to have a perpetuating kind of wineskin, I would argue, basically, in this environment. So I want you all to understand that events like tonight, we'll have a fun night tonight. Again, we're going to have 4 events like this in the next 2 weeks. But there is a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year strategic vision going on here that you guys are a part of. Last year we had about 550 people at this dinner. Tonight we have about 700 people at this dinner. Next year we hope to have 850 or 900 people at this dinner. just turning the decibel level up just bit by bit. So we even, we'll talk about this before we close, but our hope and prayer is for each of you to bring a friend next year. We know that it's somewhere in your contacts, even in your phone right now, that you have people that probably will enjoy something like this and really agree with what we're trying to do, both in value and in strategy. Now, I'll pivot real quickly to our next speaker. We've actually, I live here in Georgia, but I have the honor of working a good deal with our main federal lobbying team based in Washington, D.C. on a host of different issues in D.C., and then we try to kind of proliferate those in state chapters across the country. But is it really, really important to have executives across the country that is aligned? We're thankful in a place like Georgia to have that in Brian Kemp. The last several years, as we worked in Arkansas, we've been pleased to have our next speaker with us, who's been a champion for us in the halls and kind of highways and byways of Little Rock and across Arkansas. Asa Hutchinson is a name that not a lot of people maybe saw on the debate stage a couple of weeks ago, but may not have been intimately familiar with his background. Before he was the governor of Arkansas, bear in mind that he actually he's been a United States attorney, and also he ran the DEA. So the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, is actually one of the kind of the points of the spear, if you will, that leads on border security as well as dealing with cartels. And Governor Hutchinson has been one of the strategic visionaries, frankly, in trying to build the U.S. infrastructure in combating cartels. So, as we move through this primary season and caucus season, and we move into January and beyond, I want you to actually have to take heart in knowing that we have many, many people and voices and personalities and frankly careers built around the very values that animate us at Faith and Freedom Coalition. Would you join me in welcoming Governor Asa Hutchinson?
Listen, it's great to be here. Thanks for your patience tonight. I just learned how difficult it is to get from Savannah to Atlanta. I was there early afternoon and had a few flight issues, but thank you for being here. I'm delighted to be back in Georgia, and I want you to know I married a Georgia peach. My wife Susan is here. Wave, Susan, if you're out there. I'm sure you are. But she went to Fulton High School in Atlanta. We met at Bob Jones University, and we married. And she did. She loves telling that story. I wound up hitchhiking back and forth to date her in Atlanta and while she was teaching school. And so we've been blessed. This year, we've been married 50 years. And just a couple weeks ago, I was really trying to get to 40,000 donors so I could get on the debate stage. We had our anniversary. And I said, Susan, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it back. And she said, Asa, don't come back until you get to 40,000 donors. You got to get on that debate stage. That's how committed she is. So I'm proud of her. I'm really glad to be here. And this is a unique day in our history, of course, with the 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 attack. And I've served our country in times of crisis. When I was a young United States attorney appointed by Ronald Reagan, I assisted the hostage rescue team in negotiating the surrender of an armed terrorist group, prosecuted them in court successfully. Whenever you look at my leadership of the DEA going after the cartels in Mexico, whenever you look at the post-9/11 environment, the President called on me to help guide our nation's response in the global war on terrorism and protecting the United States of America. I understand the challenge of border security because that was my responsibility. I've led in times of crisis. And as governor, it was not always times of crisis, it was a time of change. I was proud of the fact that in Arkansas, I lowered income taxes from 7% down to 4.9%. $700 million going back into taxpayers' pockets rather than the government's. We also was recognized as the number one pro-life state in the nation I signed over 30 pro-life bills as governor of Arkansas. We protected women's sports, not a complicated issue, a simple issue, a common sense issue, and I signed legislation that prohibited biological males from competing in women's sports. And so, as governor, I had a consistent conservative record, and you apply those principles to where we are as a nation now. We need to increase our border security. And in fact, whenever you look at our 22nd anniversary of 9/11, I think about the Biden administration, and I have to say that we are not safer today from the threat of a terrorist attack than before he was elected president. Whenever you look at the threat and the risk of someone coming in across our border that wants to harm us, but you also look at his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that increased the rule of the Taliban, that gave them control of Afghanistan, and that's where our men and women went in the military to clear out those terrorist training camps. And now it's back in the control of the Taliban. And so yes, we have great risk today because we have a president that has not guided our nation with a steady hand, one that understands the strength of America in the global stage. And so it is important that we look at new leadership for our country. And I have the experience dealing with the fentanyl crisis, border security, balancing a budget, which I did for 8 years as governor of Arkansas. I know what needs to be done with a strong America. And so I am running for President of the United States because our nation is in trouble. We need to have a new direction. We need to have new leadership. Today in Savannah, I was meeting with business people and young people, and there was this young mom, and I said, "What worries you?" And she clearly looked at me like, "I'm not political, I don't know really how to respond to this." And she just simply said, "I'm a single mom, I want to be able to raise my children within a safe environment." Is that not just the prayer of a mom? And it's the right prayer. And when you look at a secure moment, we're talking about safety, but we're also talking about where she can afford to go in and buy groceries. And whenever you reduce inflation and we get rid of Bidenomics and we lower the interest rates that hits her on her credit card bills, we also want to make sure that our schools are safe. And I believe fundamentally that parents ought to know what's happening in the schools, and the schools should not hide facts from the parents. And she said, "I'm raising my children with values, and I don't want the schools to undermine those values." And so as President of the United States, let me assure you that we're going to get the federal government out of shaping leftist values in our schools. Whenever the federal government pays 10% of the school budget in the states, but try to dictate 90% of the policy, we've got it wrong in America. And so I want to make sure that we have an economy that thrives, that we control federal spending, we move toward a balanced budget. I want to make sure that we have a pro-growth energy policy. And the President of the United States was wrong this last week when they canceled oil leases in Alaska. We have an empty petroleum reserve. We need to fill it up. We need to increase the supply. We do not want our allies having to look to Russia or Venezuela for oil. We want to be energy independent, and we want to be energy dominant here in the United States of America. I will get energy production going on day one as President of the United States. There's a lot of work to do. I'm concerned, just like you, about the direction of our country. I grew up on a farm in a small community out in the country, 280 acres. My dad migrated there from Oklahoma, struggled to make a living on the farm. But you know, I learned incredible values. It was about hard work. It was about responsibility. It was about the sense of community and helping your neighbor. But most importantly, you can't be a farmer without having faith in God. And understand that we are not totally in control of the affairs of man, but we have a sovereign God that reigns in the affairs of this world. And thank goodness for it. It is critical that we have leaders in this country that reflect our national character, who we are as God's children, that manifest a spirit that reflects the goodness of America. And yes, it should be a fighting spirit. It should be reflecting courage of our country. But it should also reflect the goodness of America and that we're working for the common good and not self-interest. That's the president that I want. That's the president that I will be. I need your support. Go to asa2024.com and God bless you. Thank you.